Welcome back everyone, Oz here, and today I've got some r/BoomersBeingFools for you all. And once again, this is not all boomers being fools, just the ones that make the rest of the boomers look bad. As per usual, I'm going to narrate a story, give you my thoughts and opinions, and I hope that you give your own down in the comments below. It's always encouraged and I try to read every comment. With that being said, let's jump right to it. Let's Hill 36. Boomer was positive we opened at 8 a.m. Boomer's story. Hello, but in Spanish. Been a fan of this sub for months, and my experience earlier this week has made me want to share. So, I work for a large music retailer in Canada. I work as the store's shipper/receiver, so I'm always the first one at the store, and thankfully, I don't have to deal with any customers. I usually show up around 8 and start working around 8:30, and the store opens at 10. My office is a door that opens into the parking lot and our little loading bay, and I like to keep the door open to let some light and fresh air in. Occasionally, I get people trying to come in, talk to me, return stuff through my door, but I always politely tell them where the actual store entrance is. Now, just a few days ago, I start my usual routine of putting on a YouTube video while starting my day. Around 9 a.m., I notice a big old Jeep park in the lot, and two boomers get out and head right for me. The head boomer asks if he can come in through my door, and I tell him we're actually not open for another hour. I could just see the confusion and anger begin to bubble up on his face, and he says, "No, you're open at 8. I reiterate that we are, in fact, open at 10. He insists we should be open now. I tell him we open at 10 every day except Sundays, which is 12. He huffs and puffs and pulls out his phone, muttering to himself that he clearly checked and was sure it said 8 a.m. 15 seconds later, his face sinks with disappointment and even more anger as he realized he fucked up. But of course, instead of conceding he made a mistake, he says, "Well, that's fucking stupid. You should be open at 8. Can you just let me grab my gear?" I tell him, since I'm just the shipper, I don't do any customer transactions, and no one else is here yet, so he'll just have to wait. The other gentleman was polite and understanding, but lead boomer was... That's lead boomer. Fuck. I'm so used to seeing lead and boomer together in the same sentence. But lead boomer was fighting the urge to tantrum out right there in the parking lot. Eventually they left and came back at 10, and I gotta sit in the back and not deal with any boomer nonsense. This unfortunately reminds me of the time where I made this mistake when I was working my first job. A old couple came to the door and it was 7:30, we opened at 8, my car was parked out front, and they were tapping on the window. I was really confused. I opened the door and they came inside and I told them, "Hey, we're not open yet." Like, "Oh, could you just make an exception? We're in a rush." I mistakenly allowed it to happen. This was also my first shift on my own. And because I had just finished the opening cycle, all the machines were ready. I took their order, I made their food, everything was good to go, and they went on their way. And I was like, okay, cool, nothing more of it. 3 days later, I come back and I hear that there's a couple who has been showing up every day at 7:30. And they ratted me out and said, "Well, we got in a couple days ago, 30 minutes early, so you should let us in as well." And they had been doing that almost every day since I made the mistake of doing it. And I got in trouble for it because it was also my first shift. And it sucks. I was 16 at the time and I didn't know any better. Carpenter dazzling. Boomer upset I spoke with someone I didn't know. Boomer's story. I stopped by the Lincoln Park Zoo because I had an hour to kill and it's free. As I'm drinking my iced coffee in the shade and watching the seals, a little boy that was there with his family asked me why there was only one seal. So I pointed out another one sunning itself, and he told me he thought it was a rock. His parents were right there with his mom listening and pointed out the seals to his siblings. After they walked away, this older woman with an unnatural red hair and beaded jewelry, sold only in the museum gift shops, but very sensible shoes, marched up to me to ask if I knew them, and I said no. "Why are you talking to a child you don't know?" He asked me a question. "Only weirdos talk to children they don't know." Okay, I just wanted to enjoy my iced coffee without all of this. "I should tell someone." Okay. "What is wrong with you?" She's getting a little loud to attract attention. The seals are next to a large plaza. She was looking around to see if anyone was listening so she could feel vindicated? Important? No real idea. I just wanted her to go away. "Listen, the kid asked me a question, I answered. His parents were right there. And I'm not sure why you're involving yourself." "In my day?" Oh god, here we go. Men alone wouldn't talk to unknown children. I decided to go nuclear and end the conversation before she felt entitled to any more of my day. In your life, you're tolerated, but not liked. Everyone you know is waiting for you to pass on, so they no longer have to put up with you. Tell anyone you would like. Just go away, but quit looking for non-existent problems to involve yourself. Sputter, sputter, sputter. No, just go away. We're done. And surprisingly, she wandered away, probably to find a new non-issue to create, but that's someone else's boomer story. On a semi-related note, I found this in the comments and I wanted to share it because it's really good. Proper career, 6771. A little kid traumatized me at the zoo once. I live in a legal state with decent public transit, and I was having a rough time after my divorce. So one day, I thought I should treat myself to a fun solo outing. I stopped by the green shop one beautiful early summer day, grabbed a strongly medicated gummy, popped it in my mouth, and hopped on the train to go to the zoo. I figured it would kick in shortly after I arrived. On the trip down, I noticed the train was steadily getting full of young families. I didn't think too much of it until I got to the zoo, and there was this river of people flowing into the front entrance. I go to get my ticket and pay, then the cashier says, "Oh, no payment, it's free." It was free day at the zoo and I had no idea. That explained the horde of small children, but I was committed to having a nice day, so I just rolled with it and walked into the zoo. An hour later, I'm far in the back of the park away from the crowds near the primate exhibit, wondering what the monkeys are thinking about. This little girl walks up next to me with a school notebook and asks, "Excuse me, mister, what monkeys are these?" I point her to the information plaque, explain their mandrills, and she should read here for more information. 2 minutes go by and she's taking a few notes and I hear, "Excuse me, mister, what's a harem?" Y'all, my soul left my body. I literally looked around for the cameras. There was just her extremely large dad about 20 feet away watching my every move. And thankfully he was out of earshot. Great. I looked at her and she pointed at the plaque. The male is brightly colored so he can lead his harem of females to the jungle. I'm choking and sputtering a bit when she asks, "Does it mean his girlfriend?" "Yes! Yep, Is his girlfriend? Mm-hmm. Any more questions?" "Nope, okay, cool, bye." And I booked it to a different exhibit. Kids do say the darndest things. So the boomer story just kind of sucks because I know for a fact that she's just trying to embarrass someone and stroke her superiority complex. But the one about taking an edible in a zoo and being asked by a child what a harem is? Oh my god. I don't even know what the hell I would do in that situation. It doesn't help that he was under the influence, and let alone a child is asking you a relatively charged question and their father is right behind you, probably ready to add you to that monkey exhibit if you're not careful, and oh god. Shoe Repulsive 6434. Boomer freaked out when he found out I'm not part of his HOA. Boomer freak out. My parents had this rental property that they passed on to me when they died, and the house has been there since before the neighborhood next to it was built, so it's not part of its HOA. It's been established several times with the previous renters and my parents. While we were renovating to prepare to move in, we installed gates at 3 entrances to the property because we didn't want people to come into the property. A month after we finished, we had a visit from this boomer, who opened our back gate since the front one is locked, just to leave us the welcome to the HOA packet. I told him that we are not part of the neighborhood, so the HOA doesn't apply to our property. He huffed and said that I am, since his property is right next door. I nicely repeated myself and asked him not to come into my property again without permission. He scoffed, saying he didn't see any no trespassing signs, so he could do what he wanted. Eventually, he left. The next day, we installed locks on the gates and no trespassing signs. The next thing we know, we're getting HOA violation letters in our mailbox. The letters also listed things that were happening in our backyard that someone could only see if they were looking over the fence. After the 5th notice, that threatened eviction, I called the number listed and explained to a lady the situation, and she said that the HOA president said we were, and was the one reporting us, but all we had to do was prove we weren't, and they would waive the fines and leave us alone. I gathered the paperwork and went to the next meeting where I gave them the paperwork which proved I was right. The boomer then lost his mind and said that it didn't matter and we still need to follow his rules and change the things he wanted. Apparently, the reasons he was upset is that we installed gates and fixed the fence that prevented him from going where he wanted when he went on his walks. The gate's fence also prevents his family from taking a shortcut to the pool. The backyard was filled with things he didn't want seeing from his second-story balcony, and the trees we planted in the new fence prevented him from seeing our entire property. He got so angry that he needed to be brought to a different room. I left soon after, but I haven't heard a thing since. It's just honestly amazing how entitled some boomers are. Ah yes, the fabled no trespassing sign is what determines whether or not someone is trespassing. So for my European viewers, or for those of you who may be living in an apartment complex, it's very common nowadays, especially with the amount of farmland being bought up and turned into neighborhoods, for two separate companies that are buying that land to essentially combine and make one neighborhood. The only thing is those two companies will have different HOAs or different rules guiding that. And you can literally have it where two houses are on the same street right next to each other, but part of two different neighborhoods and two different systems, two different builders, different plants, lawn regulations, the works, and everything. This is becoming really common, and it can lead to situations like this where someone believes they're entitled, and now, for some reason, the burden of proof is on you apparently to prove that you're not part of an HOA. I think that's personally bullshit. I also find it absolutely revolting that they were willing to evict this person from their home because they put up a fence because they couldn't easily make it to the pool anymore. Emergency Falcon, 27-2. Boomer tells 5-year-old to shut up at the Children's Museum.
Boomer story.
Edit. Dang, a frightening number of y'all are talking like you'd assault this guy, and I can't tell if you're kidding. Dude was an asshole and off his rocker, but no physical threat. This one is comparatively mild next to other stories on the sub, but it's so tacky and stupid and representative of how miserable boomers get when people are enjoying themselves. We took our daughter to the city's Children's Museum. I mean, it's right there in the name. It's a place for children. And as such, one would expect there to be lots of children, right? We were well into summer vacation. Obviously, kids aren't in school right now. The museum has a lot of interactive hands-on exhibits. Again, it's the Children's Museum. There's also a planetarium. We line up outside, the doors open, and we make our way into the theater, and there's one of those old white dudes with a crusty ponytail and ball cap, parked in his seat. As families are filling in, he's shushing all the kids, telling them it's a movie theater, and they need to stay quiet. He's getting odd looks, but mostly being ignored. No one is being loud, by the way. Just the standard commotion of people finding their seats in a theater. And because we are at the Children's Museum, a lot of them are in fact children. Well, everyone settles in, and before the show starts, there's the standard announcement to, please keep your phones off during the show, blah blah blah. Nothing on the screen. Somewhere behind me I hear a kid ask his mom what the movie is. She says something about planets and space and stuff, and he excitedly starts talking about the solar system. He was not being loud at all. The show hasn't started, and the theater lights haven't even dimmed yet. The boomer, with absolutely zero discretion in his tone, goes, "Hey, shut that kid up!" There's a brief stunned silence. The kid starts to say something again, and his mom quickly shushes him, and the guy does it again. "I said, shut that kid up!" Silence. Super awkward. Fuck this guy. I turn around and angrily tell him to knock it off. It's just a kid, and the show hasn't even started. He often says that no one should be talking in the theater. The show starts. There's animations of supernovas and comments and all of that, and the couple times the kid starts to express amazement, he's quickly shushed by his mom. So sad. 40 minutes later, it's over, and that asshole boomer slept through the whole thing. As we leave, he's still there snoring. More like choking and hacking on his own saliva. Maybe he died there, I don't give a fuck. Why? He was there by himself, which isn't inherently wrong, but why go to a place that is obviously going to be populated by a lot of kids and get mad about kids being there? Would he go to a football game and get pissed at people cheering at a touchdown? Is it just a sheer hatred for children? Too long didn't read. Boomer yells at children for enjoying the Children's Museum. So, yeah, violence is not the answer in this situation, but I do feel bad for the mother because she was put in a really uncomfortable situation where her child has been robbed of childhood whimsy by this grouchy old man, and she didn't want to have a confrontational incident where everyone would be blaming her for the man's outburst. I don't think the mom was trying to be mean to her child. I think the mom was just heavily embarrassed by the fact the old man was actively yelling at her child and trying not to start anything up or cause problems for anyone else there, which sucks because space is cool. Even as an adult, I love space. I would love to see a show like this, and seeing younger kids interested in space and the fucking awesomeness that is the cosmos is cool. Instead, you got this grumpy old guy who doesn't like it when children get whimsical. Let them enjoy that. Let them be curious. Let them explore their little brains. And I feel bad for the kid because seeing children actively wanting to pursue knowledge is really endearing to me. I like seeing kids want to learn things because I was like that. I like learning things, and it gives me a little bit of hope in the future. And plus, when a child is actively wanting to learn something and they're shut down from it, it kind of closes them off from the world. But when they're encouraged to actually just learn and explore the world around them, I feel like that's just the right thing to do. I don't know. I don't blame the mother at all in this situation because she was put in a really difficult spot. But I know, at least for me, that for any child, whether it's mine or someone else's, I would want them to know that not even the sky should contain their limits. And in this situation, that guy in the planetarium who fell asleep made that child very aware of an arbitrary limit that he wanted to impose because he couldn't handle a child going, "Whoa!" in a planetarium. My heart actually breaks the fact this kid wasn't allowed to enjoy something in a children's museum, and his mom had to act as a muzzle because this guy was yelling at her because her son was excited. Deadhead Steve. Boomer stuck in the 80s economy.
Boomer story.
I work for a locksmith. Had a boomer come in for a car key and couldn't comprehend spending our quoted price. Got angry and shouted at one of my apprentices. After him finding out the old owner had sold the company, he called us thieves and left in a huff. The key's costing almost as much as the car! Few hours later, he came back in with his tail between his legs. He had gone to a car dealership and their cost was almost double ours, and every other locksmith he contacted had higher prices. He then mentioned the cost was still too high and tried to haggle me down before I could even talk. Straight away, I asked him to leave and try elsewhere. I don't give a fuck how old you are. No one abuses my workers and attacks my integrity. Go haggle someone else. The entire world has doubled in price since COVID, and I'm sick of these out-of-touch people taking their frustrations out on us. I hope the next locksmith charges you double to your humble, wrinkly ass. I wanted to include this one because I've had to get a car key replaced, and back in 2016 for my car, which was released in 2005, it was like $200. I learned a few other horrifying facts in my car that day, like how there's a little box in my car that can only have 5 keys assigned to it. And if there's any more than that, then they have to replace the entire box in the car, and that's like $1,500 to replace. That wasn't fun to learn. But the other thing that I learned that day was apparently the key's grooves that determine the lock pattern is directly related to the VIN. So in theory, if you know the VIN and you know the encoding combination, you can essentially just make your own key. But I don't know. That might just be a specific thing with the car brand that I was dealing with. But I thought that was really cool, but also kind of creepy when I realized the implications of it. Because it's like, oh, you can find the key from the VIN. And then it was like, oh, what's stopping someone else from doing that and just making a clone copy of my key by getting my VIN? Because I was shocked to show up to the dealership and they just handed me the key. Everything was already done. And it was like, oh, that's really cool, but really weird at the same time. I didn't have to look at my key. They just had it ready for me. But yeah, getting a car key replaced is expensive as hell. Sir Beard Dick. Boomer can dish it out but can't take it.
Boomer story.
We recently moved into a house in a nicer neighborhood with an HOA and all that. A few weeks ago, I was talking to my neighbor when a boomer couple he knew walked up and started chatting with us. We talked for a bit, and the boomer lady with a big old cross around her neck says something along the line of, "Are you Christian? Please tell me you're at least Catholic." I told her I was raised Catholic and left it at that. I tried to change the subject, but she kept up about us needing to go to church and get my baby baptized and blah, blah, blah. I finally got tired of it and say, well, I'm actually an atheist. This lady looks at me shocked and disgusted and said, "Oh, I was just beginning to like you." To which I replied, "Yeah, and I was just beginning to like you as well. And the look on her and her husband faces were great. They were stunned, speechless for a couple of seconds, then started saying how rude and disrespectful it was to say that. I just laughed, told them to have a nice night, and then walked away. My wife was a little pissed when I told her what I said and was worried they would be talking about us in the new neighborhood. I told her fuck what those boomers think, and we laughed about it later. It felt damn good. So I've kind of alluded to this before, but I'll state it kind of clearly. All walks of life are welcome in my community as long as they are both tolerant and willing to tolerate other walks of life in my community. If you are unwilling to tolerate others, you will not be tolerated yourself. That being said, I know that many of you do actually follow a faith, and that is totally cool. I'm gonna respect you and go out to bat for you as long as you would be willing to do the same for me. That being said, to kind of put this into just general perspective of what this is like, because I know that members of my audience who are agnostic or atheist are probably all too familiar with this. Imagine you being a person of faith in this hypothetical, or perhaps this is just you in general. You have your own guidelines that you abide by as well as your rules to life that you follow because you have that specific faith. Now imagine someone else of a different faith coming up to you and stating that you have to convert to their religion so you can be saved. It's uncomfortable and even insulting. There's nothing wrong with you practicing a different faith than someone else you're friends with. In fact, I actually encourage it. There is a time and a place to discuss religion. Just meeting someone for the first time and they're moving into the neighborhood, not the time and place. In fact, I struggle to think of what a good time and place would be. I think the conversation, this is gonna sound weird, but I think the conversation on the topics of religion has to be consensual. That sounds wild to come out of my mouth, but I do believe fundamentally that is how you have a healthy conversation on the topic. And this does go both ways, both towards religion and atheists. Look back to Reddit 2015 when it came to r/atheism, it was a fucking train wreck. And that does tie back into this story. In order for him to attempt to avoid the conversation, he told her that he was raised Catholic and attempted to leave it at that, but she continued to press the matter, which led to the awkward conversation at hand, which then leads to the further boomer entitlement of, I can insult you, but you can't insult me. How dare you use my exact words against me? Especially when I questioned you on your personal life. Honestly, you should have just told them that you were a fundamentalist of Islam and watched them have a heart attack in front of you. Dinosaurus. Boomers will be the reason I quit the farmer's market.
Boomer story.
I live in a rural village, population around 1,000. Our farmer's market is very small and volunteer run. My village does draw a fair amount of tourists, and I love being a vendor at the market in the summer. I make and sell jams, jellies, pickles, and chutneys. Nothing particularly proprietary, and it is a skill that is easy to learn. For real, if you've been thinking about canning, go ahead and try a jam. The Cheto liquid pectin comes with easy to follow recipes. I am not gatekeeping canning. I just happen to enjoy it and the market. I barely make more than $1 a jar after costs. It is just a way to support my hobby and have a little socialization. But boomers are going to ruin it for me. I don't understand the behavior so many boomers have about my products. Men and women, quite evenly split, very angrily or dismissively tell me, I make my own jam and pickle, and walk away. Happens like 3 or 4 times over the span of the 3-hour market. My vendor neighbors give me incredulous looks every time someone says it. So I'm not alone in my stunned response to this. What does save the day are the generation above and below boomers. These sweet little women, 85 to 90, will tell me how happy they are to see the young ones still making these things. I'm 44 years old. They share memories with me about their pickling days. Then there are the little old men who reminisce and tell me about their late wife's amazing jam. My age group is happy to find something their grandparents made. The Gen Zs just go hard on homemade pickles. But those damn boomers. It's actually something that I really miss about Idaho, because I moved from Idaho to Colorado, is how many farmers markets you could just stumble upon. And holy shit. Back before Idaho/the Boise area became overrun with, well, apartment complexes and just other nonsense, there was a lot of farmland and a lot of homemade goods that you could buy, and I really do miss those days. If I could find like a small little town that's mostly still farmland that isn't really on the radar yet, I would move there in a heartbeat, because I I really do miss having like homegrown and homemade things that you could just go and pick up at the farmer's market and come back with, because it's also pretty inexpensive too. You support a local business, it's made cleanly, you don't have to worry about any bullshit additives. I just kind of miss that. And back when I used to work a desk job, there was actually a farmer's market that pretty much would open up every summer right next to my office, and I would always walk down there and pick some stuff up there. One of my favorite vendors actually used to have just like this massive like bucket of honeysuckle, like the little plants that you could go and like, slurp on. Just kind of as something free that you could grab while you're wandering around and looking for things. The guy did not sell any like plants or goods. It was all just baked goods, and holy hell, those were good. I miss that kind of stuff, man. Hey, welcome to the outro. Don't forget this whole thing is basically brought to you by GamerSupps. If you like caffeine, then I can't recommend GamerSupps enough. Use code Oz at checkout to support the channel. And I do actually use this product. It's replaced all other sources of caffeine for me because I feel good. It doesn't have any of that extra stuff that a pre-workout blend might have. It's with a couple of the extra things to make it so you don't crash as hard. It's good. I like it. Personally, if you really want a good flavor, try the Soda Press and Pear or even the Dragon Fruit Punch. Those two are my personal favorites right now.